So let's switch in English now. So we are very pleased to have you guys on stage. Thanks for doing that long journey to come to Paris and share some SEO thoughts with us. So perhaps we need to know you more because we know we are just French guys and we like to only see French people, and this is a real pleasure to open our mind and listen to you. So can you please introduce yourself, starting with David? And yeah, you need to turn it on. But this one will do the job. And feel free to tell us the worst nicknames your friends are using to call you, so that we will better understand who you are.
So actually that was a very kind of awkward introduction, almost. Like, I would like to introduce David, that's his name. So my name is David. So I've been doing SEO for about 12 years. I'm now working for a small French company, Danone. I'm not sure, maybe some people might know about it. But I'm actually specializing in their infant nutrition and medicals. So I don't work on dairy or waters. But yes. Am I loud enough? I can be a lot louder. So worst name, I mean, we talked about this before. Yeah. I mean, my nickname when I was growing up was Iwanow, because in Australia no one could ever say my surname, Iwanow. And my nickname from other friends is sometimes arsehole. And yeah, Australians, we do swear a lot. Not as much as Barry Adams. But yeah, I think that's basically introduction.
Thank you, David. Juliette?
My name's Juliette. I run a consultancy. One of the big clients I work on currently is eBay. Sorry, apparently I'm not used to speaking into a microphone. I've been doing SEO for about 14 years now, client side and agency side. In terms of nicknames, I don't have a lot of nicknames that people say to my face. I don't know, I guess I'm just not a nickname person, but the only nickname I had was Lady Death, and that was when I played roller derby. So that was about as bad as it got.
Come on, Serbay.
Okay. Hello, my name is Serbay. I'm coming from...
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yes. My name is Serbay. I'm coming from Istanbul. And I'm working in digital industry like 13 years. Most of them are on the agency side, 10 years. Now I'm managing director of a performance marketing agency and also own another content marketing agency. I don't have many nicknames, but my name is really hard in Turkey also, not common name. So friends call me Sibi, so just shorten the name. So not big deal.
Rick, your turn.
Cool. I feel like I'm the baby of the group. Jesus. So I'm Ric Rodriguez. I'm SEO consultant at Yext. Yext are a technology company that take unstructured information, structure it, and do intelligent things with it. I've been in SEO for 6 years, led teams at iProspect, at Crowd, at a couple of independent agencies, and spent some time working client side with Regis. Yeah, that's me. Nicknames. I'm often called Ric Ro or Ric Rod because my surname's Rodriguez. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to start this panel talking about methodology first, because the discussion will be all about how we tackle SEO issues. So starting with the methodology, what can you share, guys, about what methodology do you use to detect the cause of a particular problem? How do you start with any kind of SEO issues? What's your first thing, the first thing you want to do?
So the first thing, we were joking about this before, is panic. So the one thing I see a lot of times is before, and this is something that's common on social media, as soon as an algorithm update is out, people are already talking about impacts. And it's before they've even had a chance for Search Console data to update. So I think the first thing you need to wait is that, 48 to 72 hours to kind of see is there been some initial impacts. And then ideally you'd probably wait at least a week, so you've got a week-on-week kind of insights. I typically look at things like Search Console. I look at often Google Analytics as well. because that's the thing. You can see a change in Search Console, and it could be a bug in Google, and you don't actually see any impact on your analytics. So yeah, so I look at the data, but I wait. I don't panic.
I think my first stop is to work out how big the issue is. Is it 1 page? Is it 10 pages? Is it 1 million pages? How big is the problem that I'm looking at? And is it confined to a particular area? So is it a certain part of the site? Is it a certain type of keyword? Is it a certain metrics such as click-through rate or anything like that? Is it confined or is it a much wider spread issue? To do that, looking at the data is how I'd analyze the size of the issue. And once I've got the size of the issue, then it's a case of what is the issue will determine how I find out what is causing that issue. Because if I'm looking at a rankings drop, I'm going to be looking at third-party tools. I'm going to be looking at something like SEMrush to say, I've lost position. Is it another competitor that's come in and taken position? Is it Google's rearrangement of the SERPs that's causing this drop? What is it that's changing? And therefore, what data do I need to analyze the problem itself?
Before the methodology or before panicking, I try to, when I got some clients, I really work on to set up things correctly, because if you don't have set up things correctly, then it might be problem when problem occurs. So first thing is do a great keyword search and track daily basis, so which you will have nice view of what's happening, because most of the times it might be seasonality, or if you're working with the brand side, it might be a TV ad they're giving and they give up giving ads, and then their traffic can go down. And this part of, if you set up correctly these things, it will help you during the problem. And after that, of course, I try to understand how much the decrease of the traffic. Then try to understand, is it from brand or non-brand, or which group of keyword or landing pages may happen this decrease. So that's one of the things I'm looking at.
So I think from my side, I echo a lot of what the guys have already said. I think because SEO is so broad, when you see a problem happen, when you see something going wrong, really you don't know what you don't know. And so the best strategy is to start answering some questions. There's some very easy questions you can answer, like, is this a demand-based thing? Well, what happened in Google Trends? Has demand dropped over the last couple of days or weeks or so? And what does that look like? Do you know of any above the line, any media activity changes? Because actually, if things are going up or down or dropping, and I worked with a bank in the UK recently where actually they were running a month-long campaign. The campaign ended on the TV and they saw a decline in traffic. Now, that's an SEO issue, but actually it's not something that as an SEO I can impact. So I always start by asking the questions, what is the stuff outside of my control that I can at least identify? And then I use traffic data and other data sources to start building out a picture of the stuff that I don't know. So start filling in the bits that I don't know.
One thing I forgot, and it's going to sound really dumb, but if you see a drop in Google Analytics and you've recently made a change, actually check that they added the analytics code back to your website. Because more than a few times I've had panic stations, we've wasted a whole lot of resources, and no one actually forgot to check that the Google Tag Manager they implemented, they put in the wrong analytics code. So again, sometimes just checking the basics first means you don't waste a whole lot of your time, your agency's time, and your analyst's time, because it's a very, very awkward conversation when you've spent a week analyzing this only to work out no one checked if the analytics code was there.
The other thing is looking beyond sort of traditional SEO metrics and into your actual business metrics as affected by SEO. If your revenue is down, is your SEO actually down, or is there a problem that is not SEO related but that is impacting your SEO performance? So if it's something, like Ric was saying, beyond your control, what is there that is in your control that is business related but not specifically SEO, that is still an SEO problem?
Do you feel we are kind of twisted by our SEO mind because we all think keyword first and not business metrics first? So I believe, and we are seeing tons of customers checking their own SEO metrics or traffic metrics, but not relying on their business metrics. So would you suggest, regarding what you said, Juliette, that you integrate like some metrics around SEO and business metrics? And what's your feedback on that regarding your experience at eBay, for instance?
I think at all times you should not be looking at SEO metrics in isolation. You should always have them in the context of greater business metrics. We were talking about different channels changing. That has a massive impact on SEO, but if you look at overall business metrics, say for instance you turn off, it's something we were discussing a little earlier, if you turn off paid search and SEO suddenly skyrockets, cumulatively to the business, you're actually still down, but SEO looks like it's doing really well as a tangent to that. SEO should always be in the context of greater business value. It's almost, I wouldn't say foolish, but it's certainly going to give you a very limited view if you are not looking at your basic data from your business. If you're only looking at SEO and going, okay, well, our rankings are up, well, that's great, but is that actually helping the business? And if it's not, why are we focusing on that?
Yeah, and I mean, something to sort of double click on that. Like feature snippets are something we talk about a lot. Feature snippets come in and they reduce traffic, but actually, is the traffic that you're getting to your site doing something you want it to do? For example, if you're getting lots of traffic to your site and they're then going on to a call center and calling you, and your call center costs are £10, £15 a call, do you really want people asking basic questions going through to your call center, or would you rather them hit the Google message that is still something that comes from you as a business, and giving customers that answer? I think having that wider awareness of the impacts of the SEO changes across the business on key business metrics really is intrinsic to what we do.
Yeah, one thing I want to add, because this is really nice part about Google Ads part. So most companies don't, in their internal team, people don't talk each other. So communication, I think, is a problem, because Google Ads guys and SEO guys looking at the same keywords but don't talk each other. So it's one of the biggest problems. So it's opposite. We can think about that, because if Google they close the paid search, organic traffic can go up. So you think that, oh, my traffic is going up because I'm doing good things in SEO. So talking, very important. And also, the nice part about Google Ads is they're giving advertising on the keyword. So they know the search trend daily basis and hourly basis. So if you ask them, they can answer if the impression share is 100%, they can understand that it's dropping down or decreasing or increasing. So I think.
I definitely think you can get so much great data out of your paid search. One of the tools that's really nice is the integration of Search Console into Google Ads. Yeah. That is a fantastic source of mixed. It allows you to see not just one channel in isolation, but actually cumulatively how they're working together.
Most of the people don't know about that, but this is fantastic.
Also, it's not retrospective. So if you haven't done it now, do it now, and then you'll have data in a couple of weeks. One other point which I think Tom highlighted in his presentation, which was good, about the aspect of business changes. So if currently you had in your page title free shipping, and as a business you decided you didn't want to sell that anymore as a feature, you would likely see a massive decrease in click-through rate. So you might think there's something wrong with your SEO. The average position hasn't changed, but our click-through rate's down by 20-30%. It's because you made those small changes. It's also, when you're using tools like Oncrawl and you're making those regular scheduled crawls, you can go back and look at your page titles to see, well, actually, there was a bug and we stopped putting free shipping into the titles. Another example, which is not so much SEO, it's basically years ago I worked for a franchise business, and our biggest converting ad copy was franchises from under $300,000. So that generated 95% of the leads to that franchise. They made a business decision that they no longer focus on those from an SEO point of view or a paid point of view. When they changed that to say, franchises from over 300,000 or something around those lines, they lost 87% of their leads overnight. So again, there's a lot of these things you have no real control over, but again, you need to be aware of things and also making annotations in your analytics. If you do something drastic, like do a migration, make sure there's an annotation analytics, because if you're away on holidays, they know why the traffic is down 50%. It's because you did a failed migration.
And I think that's really important when you come back to compare year-on-year data, because actually, if you see things are down last year, and you might take a really positive picture that things are really up, but at least with the annotations you can see the detail, and that's really valuable.
Yeah, keeping a change log specifically of SEO, or actually not just SEO, but any SEO impacting elements. So say, for instance, something else has changed on the site. Keeping a change log on a constant basis, I cannot stress how valuable that is as like a proactive problem-solving tool. You can go back 6 months and go, hang a second, we saw a big bump and then we saw a big drop. What were the changes that happened around those times? And it's amazing how often you go, oh yes, somebody turned off the indexation for this whole subfolder. Gee, I wonder why things changed. So it sounds really basic, but just even if you started today and you just noted a change, like whether it's an algorithm change, whether it's a coding change, whether it is a messaging change, those things are important. And you forget about them because they become business as usual. You forget about them, yes, that. So it should be part of your problem-solving methodology that is done before you have the problem.
Thank you, guys. And regarding your experiences, what are the biggest problem you've encountered, and what's the most common mistakes you're seeing on a daily basis and regarding your experiences?
So the biggest problem, I guess, it's more so of a project. So a couple of years ago, I worked for a large agency, and our client was in the insurance space, and were very, very aggressive on SEO and link building. And it turns out they got 3 or 4 manual penalties. We know they got 3 or 4 manual penalties because we did a link removal project. And every time we got 1 penalty, Google says, actually, you've also got a penalty here. But we basically had to audit 150,000 backlinks. We developed a process and methodology, and we used various tools. One was like Linkity, which is developed by a French SEO, lives in Amsterdam, where we basically went through and manually classified all the links and went through and flagged them, created a template, created a process, and that was 3 or 4 months worth of work with 3 SEOs. So that was probably so much the biggest one. Common causes, migrations. The amount of times I see issues with traffic is because a migration happened, people redirected all links to the homepage, the agency didn't redirect any links. Difficult problems to diagnose. I think crawling and maybe rendering issues, particularly with a lot of sites moving to like React, that's probably the hardest thing, because you ask the developers, is everything server-side rendered or client-side rendered? Sometimes you get a blank look, which is a worry if their specialty is React. But those types of things, it often takes a very pragmatic approach to go through, test the sites, fetches Google, look at the various logs, look at errors. So I think those types of things are probably harder to diagnose. And I think communication is probably the biggest thing around how to address any of these things. So speaking to other people in the business, communicating, because you might have just joined the company and they know 3 years ago when they're working with that agency, they did this or they did that, and they forgot to put the annotations analytics.
Yeah, just a quick jump on that. We saw very common mistakes when we are working with customers, and when they are a new head of SEOs, they missed their first 30 days at the company, because you need to ask some questions, because you need to know who has the power within the company and who has the knowledge about the history of your website, and you need to know to where door you need to knock on, so that you can get things done. Is it in the CTO's hands, or is it in the marketing hands? You need to know who can push the button, and it's always a question of communication. So the first thing to do is obviously setting up your SEO metrics and business metrics, stuff like that, but also to better understand what organization you're in, because it's always a problem for you to not know who to call if you get that problem.
You kind of stole my point.
Okay, sorry.
Basically, for me, the most common cause of problems, doesn't matter the size of the company, communication. devs put a change live, you don't hear about it for 3 weeks, and suddenly you're going, why are my rankings going away? I haven't done anything. Oh wait, hang a second, the entire footer link structure has changed. One of the biggest problems that I've had to solve was what happens when your site is several million pages big and 70% of it is a duplicate? How do you get rid of that? Burn it to the ground and start again. Strangely, not quite that, but it was having to explain to someone that that a business listing should not be in 3 different places just because they say they're servicing 3 different areas. So I mean, I'm sure you come across it with some of your clients. It just so happened to be a location-based problem, but I've come across this on multiple sites. Huge sites, looks great, and suddenly once you start digging into it, you realize that it's cannibalizing 80% of itself. Most difficult problems to diagnose, that's actually a tough one. Small problems are actually the biggest problems to diagnose, simply because particularly if you have a large site, it's hard to strain the small issues out when they're still small issues because there's so much noise, there's so much change going on, that by the time you realize that they're a much bigger problem than if you were able to resolve them when it was just affecting a few pages. For that, constant data analysis and crawling is basically the only way to find out that, yes, we suddenly have an indexation section that affects only one category, or it only affects a certain type of page, or the things have changed on a particular page template that only affects 20% of pages, but not all of those 20% show the problems in the same way.
Yeah. I want to tell 2 things. One of the biggest thing that happened in my career is one of my team members deleted one big website from Google, accidentally, of course. He wanted to delete all indexes on a subdomain, but he didn't see the signal, or he need to read the help center, of course. But he deleted, and then when we woke up morning, they have no index in Google, and they have really good amount of traffic, nearly, I think, more than 5,000 visits per day, 500,000 visits per day. So, and they immediately call, what's happening? Is there, Google banned us or something, etc. So I immediately talked with the guy and looked at, okay, he made obviously a mistake. Then the company wanted to really make big stress on us, and my team member was really panicked, and he don't know what to do because they are earning lots of advertising money. So it's on me. Then I throw the ball on the Google side and say, hey, Google made some mistakes sometimes, and I convinced them because I look so confident in that case. So they didn't do anything, but 1 or 2 days, their index didn't recover. So after 2 days, they start to get some traffic. The second one is, I think, I don't want to say the technical and etc., but I dealt with more than 200 clients in my agency life. So one of the biggest thing is, of course, working with developers is really hard always, and you need to know how to communicate them, because if they don't execute something, you won't be successful. So one of the things happened to me is one of the biggest websites in Turkey, they have, I think, 5 million visits per day, and they have bigger page views than YouTube. People entering, they have listing website, and people are looking for luxury cars, etc. Even they don't buy it, but they want to look at it. So 7 years ago, we got them, and I know their CMO. And the day we got them, their page rank dropped 1 point. So their CMO called me, hey, Serbay, can we fix it? Say, how can I fix it, this page rank? No, I think you can find a solution. Come to our office. So I said, I couldn't come because long way, etc. I said, okay, I'm going to send one of my important developer to your office to fix it. Hey, we couldn't do like that. And then this long way, they're one of the 10 years developer, which is really snobby, come to our office. And the first thing he said to me that, okay, Serbay, you're the guy, let's fix it. You know this thing, so he's angry. He was angry with me because someone sent him to long way and he doesn't like me in the first place. So he started very badly at the conversation. Okay, let's do it. You know this stuff, man. I don't know, so you can do it. So, and that thing is, we had some 2 hours with him. So it's really stressful, and I learned lots of things in that part, because it's important that someone don't like you, and you need to turn it in a good way, because you are going to work with him, not CMO. So in this way, then it comes to relations, how to build relations and how to talk with his ego. So the first part of it is I'm just telling him how great developer he is and how he's managing the website in a great way. Then I start to talk about my experience and the things. Then after our meeting, we were really good. And we of course couldn't solve the problem, but that time it's just a redirection. They couldn't do some redirections properly, so they do it, and probably 10 days later it's corrected. But I think one of the biggest things I have in career is really relationship. So tech things and everything we can of course talk and try to solve, but if we have good relations with those people, marketing team or developer team, it will be much better. So relationship is, I think, nice. And one of the hardest point that's you can't diagnose is which happened once again, is really weird case. We got a website. They are just new, 6 months website, but their traffic is always only 10 people entering the website every day, 10 visitors. And we can't solve it. It's a very nice domain. They're entering lots of content. We look at everything. We go to Webmaster Hangouts, ask questions, what is going to happen? And he always answered the general answer, so not anything helpful. But we did everything, backlinks, etc. Then one of our person in the team said that, hey, what was this website before? So we looked at the website, and the website was adult website, but 10 years ago. So one of the first adult website in Turkey or something, I don't know, which is domain is really powerful. But then in those 10 years, they didn't do anything about that. So, and what's the strange thing, in the Search Console, they're getting some traffic from their content, but all keywords related to some erotic keywords. So we are saying, but they don't have that kind of content. So we asked this situation to John Miller 3 times. Again, he said, oh, no, we are okay. That time maybe it's classified as adult, but it needs to be removed because we are just continuously looking at that. And in one of the Hangout, one of the person in my team, she created an infographic that tells the problem properly and ask again. And then Jomila said, oh, okay, maybe you can send email to this address because they give a link to us. Maybe it can be a problem. So we emailed to those address that we have a problem with it. And then I think 1 month later, the site started to get hundreds of thousands of traffic daily because they said, yeah, it's stuck because they classified website as an adult 10 years ago and it's stuck in somewhere. And it didn't correct it in those throughout the years, and then it's solved, but it's really hard.
Thank you. Do you have something to add, or?
I mean, I have a couple of stories,
yeah.
but I mean, I don't think I can top that. That was pretty epic. I think for me, the biggest problems that I've had to face, and it links very much back into the themes that we've already discussed around communication, and I actually think it's about knowing when to bring an SEO practitioner into a conversation as well. So communication is part of that, but it's slightly different. The biggest problems I've ever had to face in SEO are, hey, we've just migrated our site. We talked to some guys about doing some redirects. They've got the redirects in place. We've just tanked. Why have we tanked? And in each of those cases, two FTSE 250 companies I work with that situation has happened. The reason the site tanked was, yeah, the redirects were great. The content sucked, right? Just the website was rubbish. And an SEO practitioner could have come in at the start during the build process and say, hey, this is some of the stuff you shouldn't do. Like, don't block these folders because they are important for crawlers to get to this section of your site. Really basic stuff that now that the site has dropped, retrospectively fixing this stuff is really complicated. You've got to get you've got to justify the resource for the developers. You've got to actually tell them what they need to do. In the build process, would have been a 2-minute job to fix. So for me, it does come back to this communication point. But it's also knowing that lots and lots and lots of different things now impact SEO. From when you run TV campaigns. I talk a lot about TV campaigns because I've just come from a media agency, but TV campaigns being one thing, but even just when your PR guys are going out and trying to get coverage, like there's lots and lots of different variables that can impact what happens with your site. And knowing when it's appropriate to bring an SEO person in, and actually bringing the SEO person in more often than you expect to be appropriate, really is the solution to those issues, in my view, at least.
Thank you. And how can a problem-solving approach help to convince a client of the need of SEO solutions and services? Because when you're taking some money out of their pockets and then you're asking them to take a few more bucks, how do you convince people to get used to setting up tools and the right approaches?
So I think it's also to understand the context of how important SEO is to their business currently. So I've worked for businesses where 60-70% of the traffic is organic. They don't care for SEO because they say we don't need to do it because everything's good. They only start to see the need for SEO when that growth slows down. I guess you can also use things like the opportunity lost. So we have done calculations in the past, and again, when we did these, we did upset people internally, but we basically created a model based on if you don't do SEO, we'll lose 15% of our traffic over the space of the year, which is 35 million euros in revenue. You also explain to the developers and the tech leads that you'll miss your Christmas bonus. So when you start putting, I guess, some financial necks on the line, or you will say, if you're a smaller business, you might have to let go of some staff unless you make some drastic changes. I think those types of things, you have to be careful how often you use them. So I think trying to quantify what is the actual business impact and how it will affect them personally is sometimes some things you have to do. But also, again, it's showing the positive side of how much they could gain. So the downside is how much you can gain doesn't always get as much traction as how much you have to lose.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point. And actually, what you can lose is definitely valuable, but actually even just putting a media value on the traffic that SEO could drive as well. Because a lot of the time, marketing budgets are, dare I say, and at least from what I've seen, favoring big advertising budgets, big media budgets. Actually, SEO is a really effective way and very cost-effective way to drive traffic, but quantifying that in terms that someone that is a CMO or an advertising exec will understand is complicated. So actually, if you can take the traffic and put it into a media value term, it can be quite helpful.
Those are really great answers. I want to take a step back from that. So yes, we need business data to quantify the problem, but by having a solid approach to problem solving and actually helping the client understand A, that there is a problem, B, what the problem is, and C, what the steps are that you need to take to fix that problem, and then putting in the business data is the best way to show a client, yes, SEO needs to be a part of this, whether it is fixing this problem or preventing the next problem. By helping them to understand what the problem is and what the solution is, you then help them to understand, yeah, we need an SEO person, whether it's we need more people in-house, we need an agency, we need a service. What do solution steps tell you about what you need to bring in? If they don't understand the problem, it's very difficult to get a client to buy in.
I think that's a great point. I think a lot of the time we highlight the problem without going in with the plan or the solution. So it's great to say, there is a problem, you're going to risk this, or you could be saying, this is the effective value, but actually you need to go in with and here's the solution that fixes this, or at least in my view fixes this, and these are the steps to deploy it.
Yeah, actually, putting some business value is so important, and as you all mentioned, so before the problem, or if you have a case that you can show them the value, so the next one, you can show, look, in the older case, we did this thing, but this is going not well. But in this case, in the new case, we need to talk with other departments. For example, I had one thing which is so weird. Once when I consulted Turkish Airlines, they made a campaign which is go really viral, Messi and Kobe. They had lots of advertising, and they had in YouTube videos watched over 100 millions. So the funny part is we just get in those times, and after that they have another campaign which is 2 years later, Batman and Superman.
Bless you.
Go
Are
ahead.
you good? They had. Oh, great. They will have another campaign for Batman and Superman. And the worst part about Messi and Kobe is, which I showed them, that what they lost, because that campaign go really viral. But the fun part is their videos in YouTube got backlinks, all the backlinks, and 1,000 backlinks from root domains, just videos, and the really great websites, measurable to New York Times, whatever. But Turkish Airlines didn't get any links, because they don't have any page. So where those people can give link to? So that's a very big opportunity they lost, because if they got those links to Turkish Airlines, they will rank lots of terms in all around the world. So, but this is the case that I showed them. Look, in the previous case, you lost this amount of things because of non-creative solution, because you didn't create any page. So in the Batman and Superman, they created some fictional pages for Gotham City, for example. It's just weather, etc. They create another landing page. So after that, they got linked to those pages, at least 200 links, root domain links to those pages. So then they got the link, and they use this value. So this is so important to talk with different teams, not just Google Ads, talk with PR, advertising, the other teams.
So one thing around this, and I guess I've benefited from this in the past. So in my previous role, I actually got hired because the amount of times the business screwed up their migrations. So there's a case study on Systrix, if you want to read about. They relaunched the business. They went from a generic name, and my Espanol is horrible, Segunda Mano.
Segunda mano, sí.
Yeah. So they had a generic domain, which was prize of place in Spain. They just got given free traffic because of this. They decided to rebrand the business. So it was, I think, the CMO at the time got in their head that they wanted to, do one of those case studies to be famous. So they rebranded as Vibo. Their traffic dropped something like 90% almost overnight. I mean, in the end, they've reclaimed a lot of the SEO traffic, but they lost all their branded traffic. So, it's the case that, you can get that traffic back, but it took a lot of investment, but I got a job out of it. So I think it's a case that, when you're working out when you need to convince a client, you need to look at the opportunity. So if we're launching a media campaign and we're spending $10-20 million doing a partnership with DC Comics, maybe you should spend a couple of $100 to maybe do some keyword research and launching a landing page. If you're doing a migration, definitely involve SEOs. So if it comes down to things, which don't have a traffic impact or don't see a traffic potential, I don't think you always need an SEO involved. But if there's anything in terms of you putting things at risk, that's when you want to quantify an SEO involvement.
Although I think there's a lot of data that we are used to crunching and we can look at that does inform sort of wider business intelligence. I mean, we're in the business of intent and working out what people are looking for in the ways they're looking for it. And I once worked with a fashion e-commerce where the marketing director was insistent that we call something an azure jacket. That's why I worn a blue jacket ever since. And no one searches for azure jackets because no one really knows what azure is. People search for blue jackets and by not thinking about that and not speaking in the terms that people are looking for, they missed out on a load of opportunity. So there's a lot of data that we can use to inform, to help justify, and to help brand teams make these decisions. But yeah, it's knowing when to bring us in. I think it's important.
And that's where SEO becomes a business problem-solving mechanism rather than just an SEO problem-solving mechanism. And I think if we keep looking at SEO in isolation again, we miss out on a lot of because it's amazing. I don't know. I'm assuming everyone here has been in SEO for a while. Is there anyone here who has not picked up an issue that was not SEO related while doing SEO evaluations?
We've got one. Alexis at the back.
So out of everybody here,
Oh, we've got 3. Is it 3?
Yeah.
so you out of everybody else, you have picked up business specific issues while doing SEO problem solving. That is a huge amount of people. It's more often than not, when you're looking for SEO, you will find business problems as you're going through it. They often cause SEO problems, but most SEOs I know will look at everything. They won't just look only at SEO in isolation.
Just a quick comment on that, because we are seeing a big trend, particularly in France, where because of what you said, I mean that SEOs are uncovering business-related issues. We are seeing SEO guys going up in the hierarchy of the company, and we are seeing a few former head of SEOs getting jobs like CMOs or COOs. Do you see that kind of trends as well in your own countries?
Yeah, absolutely. People are buying into SEO generally. I mean, they've been buying into SEO for ages, but more and more people are understanding that the skills and the techniques and the talents you need in SEO are applicable equally to other marketing channels. As long as that person is willing to engage with all channels equally, they're not going to go, hey, SEO is special, everybody else is not so special. If you are willing to engage with everybody and you're willing to say, like, TV is as valuable as SEO, everything is valuable to a business, and you're willing to treat things in a much more egalitarian way, yes, then that makes you a great candidate for that. Because a lot of your SEO background will be really nicely applicable to CMO. So.
And I think because of how broad SEO is becoming, because of how many different stakeholders we talk to on a regular basis in the business, actually your SEO person becomes quite valuable, almost from like a business operations perspective. So back when I worked for an agency and was kind of on secondment at an office-based company, I was an SEO, but like on a daily basis, my job was to connect the marketing teams with the IT teams, whether that was the advertising guys, whether that was the PPC guys, or even if it was the email marketing teams. They had no idea who was in the dev team and vice versa. And yes, I was an SEO. Yes, my objective was to drive incremental revenue and through the channel, but through connecting the different teams, I was able to drive wider business change, and that's where I see a lot of SEOs getting involved now.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the term I think 4 years ago Harvard Business Review published. They called technical marketer. So they're saying that marketers need to be technical, and so when I looked at definition, SEOs need to be technical and creative on the other side, and using the wide range of tools. So it's really meeting SEOs with like a new generation of CMOs, because other departments maybe just using the ads channels, but if you are SEO, also you have to be good at communication. So I think this is normal, which I'm also seeing in Turkey too. Yeah.
We can do like a standoff.
I'm sorry?
We can do like a standoff. Who's going to speak first? So I guess if I look at my role, so my title's changed, but the job's the same. But I'm basically in charge of search globally, so for paid and organic. A recent example is we're launching a new product globally. So we were able to use, obviously, various keyword tools to identify what types of topics people were searching for around that topic. But there's nothing really out there. But it's also good because we can go back to the business and give some guidance as to if they're going to create the content, here's the types of information people want answered, but also trying to set some expectations. So when you launch this product, you're not going to get 1 million visits the first day. But also working with the developer's strategy of we launch the website, we buy the AdWords traffic because obviously we want to get some of that exposure, and then we can progressively map the organic traffic over time, tone down the AdWords spending and have an always-on campaign when the organic takes over. So I think that's the important thing as SEOs. You need to be able to sort of sometimes step a little bit outside pure SEO. And again, AdWords, like, it's amazing, but you don't want to become dependent on it. The way I pitch it to my business internally now, it's renting visitors. but you can rent very, very, very targeted visitors. So in terms of if you want to focus on, Batman versus Superman or Superman versus Spider-Man, you can actually get information and understand and measure, if you have content around those particular topics, how do those visitors actually convert? And that's how you can feed back to your team to say, well, actually, while it's very important, everyone really seems to have much better conversion rates around Robin for some reason. So I think we need to make sure our content features Robin more so than it does other characters in the DC universe.
Thank you. If we are going in more details and more specific examples of how do you use data for particular cases? You talked about previously, Juliet, about an ad going in different subfolders, right? Or different with multiple category. Regarding your classifieds experience, isn't it what you said previously? I'm just talking about specific problems for near duplicates, for instance. You have this listing with that is coming on the real estate category and the on the selling category and the for instance the renting category of real estate. Tell me.
He's the classified.
Okay. What kind of data and being I need you to be very specific about what kind of data you're looking at for a very specific problem, because I believe we are all aware about the methodology we need to apply, but when it comes to details and specific problems like near duplicates, like analyzing the payload, what kind of things are you looking at, and what are concrete examples?
So if I was to do focusing on the classified industry, I would typically look at a lot of other factors. So I would look at abundance factors. So there was some general trend in terms of the amount of listings within a particular category that was linked to its performance. So you kind of have the winner takes all principle when it comes to classified websites. So obviously in France you have Leboncoin, and I do apologise for my French, but they dominate because of the amount of listings they have. So it's kind of almost the chicken and the egg. You need a certain amount of listings. So this is where if you see a drop in listings in your platform, you will start to see typically a drop in traffic. It's also linked to obviously internal linking structure changes, but also you might have external factors such as pricing changes. So previously you could list 3 ads for 10 euros, now it's 1 ad for 10 euros. So there's often external factors that will actually influence this. But again, if you have some very top level core metrics, you know the amount of traffic come to your website, you know the amount of social shares you get on average, the amount of listings you have in that category, I think if you're monitoring a couple of those top line metrics, it can very much help. And also if you're I'm not going to make a joke about that, I'm just going to leave it.
Go ahead.
Please let Google index and crawl your site. I know it's a crazy thing, but there are certain markets, and I think, and not to offend anyone, but typically a lot of French businesses have a very adverse view on American technical companies. So Facebook, we see a lot of times when we're actually testing competitors, you can't fetch the open graph tags when you're crawling the French websites because they've blocked Facebook from crawling. So I do think if you're wanting to capture more traffic from some of these channels, you can't block them, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm not sure, is that confident?
Yeah.
So I mean, there are the basic data elements that everybody should be looking at kind of regularly, and that is, what is your traffic, what is your revenue, if you have users, visitors, or buyers, that metric. Just to what David was saying now about the number of listings leading to a drop in revenue. It's same with the marketplace. Same with anything when you're selling and actively selling something. If there are less things to buy, you will logically sell less. It just follows. But another tool, another piece of data that I find really, really useful is SERP trending data. So how SERP features are changing in different areas and in different industries. Last time not the most recent time Google did an algorithm update, but the time before that, there was a massive uplift in the coverage of PLAs within the SERP results, specifically for shopping. And when we looked at it, the changes to the SERP layouts had a greater impact on our performance than anything Google's algorithm had actually done to us. So it's not just about what your internal data is, it's what is third-party data telling you about what everybody's going through. When you look at only your own data, you don't get a sense of what the industry's doing. So find industry benchmarks that you feel you can trust, or at least that give you a indicative look. I mean, we all know third-party data is not perfect. It's just the way it is. It's imperfect in its collection. But first-party data combined with third-party data gives you proper context.
What kind of tool stack do you use to handle this?
Specifically with SEMrush for the trending data, I find that their pulse data is really good. Their data trends, their SERP features, I find that's really good. I've kind of used Search Metrics a little bit, but they both have very similar tools, so there's quite a lot of overlap there. In terms of actual data, Search Console and analytics, particularly using API integration into something like Screaming Frog if I want to look at specific areas. But those combined with a lot of our in-house proprietary data is the most of what we look at. I find it's got the most complete data picture. Yes, customer data.
Yeah. So that was one thing which we actually discussed prior to the session, is also talking with the customer service team, looking at social media, because you'll find if you're an e-commerce site and you're people trying to buy off your platform and your recent front-end change means the checkout button has now vanished, people get very angry on social media. So a lot of times we actually saw issues flagged with our platform days or hours ahead of time when it comes through our social media and our customer service channel before the developers even worked out something was broken. So I think that's the other thing. You need to do social listening, and you need to be engaged and interacted with your customer service team, because they are amazing. They will chase customers, they will get URLs, they will get screenshots, they will get all the grunt work that your developers are sometimes too busy or
too lazy.
I never want to say a developer's lazy. Too busy is the technical term.
And when anything has changed with any of your experiences, whether it's your app, whether it's your mobile site, whether it is your desktop site, whether it is your shopping experience, the moment you've made any kind of change that has any significance, monitoring customer data becomes absolutely paramount, because you then have 10,000, 5,000, 100 people who are actively testing your product for you, whether they think of themselves as testers or not. They are the people who are actively using your product, and they're the people who will very quickly find the smallest possible problems and the really big ones where the submit button or the checkout button suddenly disappears.
And I think review data is a really powerful source of this as well. You can collect it across lots of different platforms, but actually if you're a business, so this may be going off a slight tangent, but if you're a business that is getting positive reviews around a product, and you can see people calling out certain USPs and certain key features, and that's not something you're talking about, immediately you can start integrating that with your on-site copy and start calling it out further up on the page to really make a point of it. And that is linked to this whole point around customer data and knowing what's out there.
Yeah, it's actually rank tracking is so important. So in some rank tracking tools like GetStat and I think SEO Monitor also, have some features like they're tracking the SERP integrations changes over the time. So it will be really helpful for you to understand something is changing or not. So, and also setting up correct tag groups is really helping you to analyze the situation. And also with this data and some historical data from Search Console will be very helpful. If you need to, now it's 18 months, but you can store more of them historically, so it will help you to analyze what's the problem 2 years ago, what was happening, etc. And also, for example, in the crawler part, segmentation is, I think, really important. For example, I'm using a lot on Oncrawl, the segmentation part. So on the page, the crawler also crawling, but you can take some data out from XPath. So you can understand that, for example, how many listings on that page, you can get the number and track it for example, weekly crawls or brand name or whatever, or pricing, whatever. So when after that, if something problem happens, so you can understand that, oh, okay, this number decreased or increased or whatever. So it will help you to understand better, I think.
I think for me, we've sort of covered most of the places that I would look with the other guys in the panel. I think there's a lot to be said for actually looking at the SERP itself. So if you have a page or you have a set of pages that you know should be visible for a certain term. Now, I'm not in favor of doing the whole kind of keyword SEO, one keyword per page process. I think it's way deeper than that. But there is a lot to be said for if someone is looking, how would someone look for this page? What is already occupying that space? And why or what are we doing differently, and start dissecting as to why that might not be working. An example, I worked with a few financial clients recently, and within that industry, mortgage calculator is a really high value term. And the client that I worked with site was just a long bit of content that didn't really tell you anything about calculators, and at the end there was a button. When we looked at what was actually visible in the SERP and why they weren't performing, what we realized was that actually no one really knows what a mortgage calculator is and what one does. They need to be given a little bit more information and a lot more options. We looked at it, we took the learning, we redesigned the page so it had various different types of calculators, launched it back into the SERP, and we were top of page 1 within 2 weeks. You only would know that from looking at what was going on in the SERP. You can use ranking data, you can use other things, but actually sometimes getting a little bit of inspiration is important as well.
I think user intent is
Completely.
really shaping the SERP, so this is really important. I think.
And another aspect is the seasonality and or temporal data. So Tom referenced this, and I know Dawn is going to go into it in much more detail, but I think a SERP isn't the same at all times of the year, and a query doesn't mean the same thing throughout the year. Watch Dawn's talk for much more detail about that. But I think seasonality and specific time of year changes to intent are becoming much more important. So data around that, the more data we can gather around that, the better.
I think just watch Dawn's talk anyway, because it's going to be epic.
Yes, we all agree Dawn's talk is going to be awesome. We can't wait to see it.
But I mean, look, Apple have just released new iPhones, so I would expect the SERP to show information around the latest iPhone rather than one that's 2 years old. And I think it will see, and there is a point of reactivity that goes on where if Google can see certain trends and people looking for certain information in relation to a certain context, then it will switch up what's happening. That may well be something that impacts you as a business. If you're a telecom company and all of a sudden your iPhone 10 traffic starts dropping and you have no iPhone 11 page, then that's probably what's going on. But yeah, it's important to see how this starts to change over time as well.
Or if, for instance, you're a marketplace that sells second-hand phones, they release a new iPhone, suddenly the last iPhone pages suddenly start spiking in traffic. I mean, there's a shocker.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, guys. As we are running out of time and that we are coming to an end to that panel, I'd like to keep room for 1 or 2 questions if you guys want to ask something. So any question in the room for our experts? Or yeah, go ahead.
I don't really have a question, but I found it very interesting. So you contacted John Muller, and then John Muller gave you an email address in Google.
No, link.
A link?
Link, yeah. Just put the link in the Webmaster Hangout.
Yes. So and then you've the domain. You added domain.
Yes, I send I think complaint or something to that URL. There's a form, so we entered the domain which is ours and ask them that what's going to happen. So then 2 weeks later they removed that classification.
There's a really amazing story. So could you share that link with us?
Yeah, of course. I can share my email with you.
But I'm not finished yet. So did you have this domain on Analytics or Search Console?
Yeah.
And there wasn't any manual penalty on there?
No any warnings.
But it's not a penalty, it's a classification.
Yeah, classification.
So Google interpret that domain to be adult, which means it's less likely to show in the search results because it's adult content. So I think by default safe search is on.
Yeah.
So if you turned off safe search, you would probably have seen the domain.
Yeah.
So by default, majority of users were censored from that content because of its nature.
Yeah. And one thing you can understand this problem, because the domain is in the Turkish woman.com. So, but I had another case years ago which I couldn't solve that time. They have a brand name. So when you enter their brand name, Google doesn't add up anything, no suggestion. So then you understand that this is an adult filter. So, but the domain was woman.com, so I couldn't understand. But that time, I realized that if the brand name, Google doesn't add up anything, no suggestions. So then I understand that time, but I couldn't find the link and etc. But at that time, you understand that, yes, okay, this is a classification with adult.
Any more questions? Okay, guys, so thank you very much to share all this stuff with us. It was a very big pleasure for us to have you here.